Let's start with the most common trick, one you fall victim to every day: the straw man fallacy. Imagine you're in a wrestling ring. Instead of facing you, his strong opponent, your rival builds a flimsy, comical-looking scarecrow that vaguely resembles you. He then proceeds to punch and kick it with pride in front of the audience, declaring his overwhelming victory. This is exactly what happens in an argument. This fallacy occurs when your opponent is unable to attack your actual argument, so they deliberately misrepresent, exaggerate, or ridiculously simplify it to create a distorted and fragile version, a straw man, and then they attack that version instead of your original point. A political example: a public figure says, "We should review our immigration laws to be more organized and humane." Their opponent immediately retorts, "So you want to throw open the borders and flood the country with chaos and criminals? You want to destroy our national identity." Notice the poison in this response. The idea of organization or humanity was never discussed. It was replaced with a terrifying image of opening the borders, which is a straw man that's easy to attack and stir fear around. How do you counter it? Don't fall into the trap of defending the straw man. Don't say, "No, I don't want to flood the country with chaos." By doing so, you've entered their playing field. Instead, expose the trick calmly. "It seems you're not responding to what I said, but to a distorted version of my words. My original point was about organizing the laws. Let's return to that point. What is your specific objection to it?" The second fallacy is the favorite weapon of those who have no argument: the ad hominem fallacy. This fallacy is a declaration of intellectual bankruptcy. When someone cannot refute your idea, they start refuting you. They shift from attacking the message to attacking the messenger. It has multiple forms, some direct and some insidious. Direct ad hominem, insult: "Your idea is stupid because you are stupid." This is the most blatant form. Circumstantial ad hominem, attacking the circumstances: "Of course you support higher taxes on the rich. You're just poor and envious." Here, the argument is tied to the person's circumstances to strip it of its merit. The you too fallacy, tu quoque: this is an attempt to discredit a criticism by pointing out that the accuser is also guilty of the same thing. It's like a smoking doctor tells you, "Smoking is bad for your health," and you reply, "How can you advise me when you're a smoker yourself?" His smoking doesn't change the fact that smoking is harmful. A business world example: an employee suggests a new idea to save costs. The manager replies, "These are the same ideas you proposed at your last company that went bankrupt. I don't think we should be taking advice from someone with that track record." This is an attack on the past instead of an evaluation of the current idea. How do you counter it? Decisively separate the person from the idea. Say, "Your focus on my character/circumstances/past is an attempt to evade discussing the idea itself. Let's assume someone else entirely proposed this argument. Would you still find it flawed? And why?" The third fallacy is the jailer of minds, the false dilemma fallacy. This fallacy seeks to paralyze your ability to think by painting a world that is only black and white, with no shades of gray. It occurs when only two options are presented as the only possibilities in a matter, when in reality, there is a wide spectrum of other possible options. It's a powerful tool for control and manipulation because it forces you to choose between a bad option and a worse one, or their preferred option. Its timeless motto is, "You're either with us, or you're against us." A social example: you either get married and start a family, or you will die alone and miserable. This is a false binary that ignores millions of other possibilities. A person can be happy and have strong relationships without marriage. They can find meaning in their life in different ways, etc. How do you counter it? Be a paradigm breaker. Don't accept the framework others impose on you. Simply name the other available options. "I see a third, fourth, and fifth option. We could do this or try that." The issue is not as simple as you're trying to portray it. The fourth fallacy is the champion of doomsday scenarios, the slippery slope fallacy. This fallacy plays on the fear of the future. It is the art of taking a small, logical first step and then constructing a long chain of deteriorating consequences that ends in an absolute catastrophe, without providing any real evidence that this chain is inevitable. It's like a small snowball that someone claims will inevitably turn into an avalanche that swallows the entire village. An example from parenting. If you let your son play video games for an hour, he will become an addict, he will neglect his studies, he will fail to get a job, and he will end up on the street. Is this possible? Theoretically, yes. Is it inevitable? Absolutely not. This fallacy ignores all the steps and controls that can be placed between point A and point Z. How do you counter it? Demand evidence for the inevitability of the chain. Don't argue about the final catastrophe. Question the links between the steps. Say, okay, I agree we don't want him to end up on the street, but what evidence makes you believe that 1 hour of gaming will necessarily lead to neglecting his studies? Isn't it possible it could be a reward that motivates him to study more? The fifth and final fallacy for today is the most insidious because it masquerades as logic: the appeal to ignorance. This fallacy simply states, since you cannot prove that I am wrong, therefore, I am right. It uses a lack of evidence as evidence in itself. It occurs when it is claimed that something is true because it has not been proven false, or conversely, that it is false because it has not been proven true. A classic example: no one has presented concrete proof that life doesn't exist on other planets. Therefore, aliens definitely exist. The error here is jumping to a certain conclusion from a state of not knowing. The only logical response to a lack of evidence is, I don't know. Not therefore, my conclusion is correct. How do you counter it? Remind your interlocutor of the golden rule of logic. The burden of proof lies with the one who makes the claim, not the one who denies it. Say, the fact that we don't have proof of something's non-existence doesn't make it exist. If you claim it exists, you are the one who must provide the evidence, not ask me to provide evidence of its absence. The straw man, ad hominem, false dilemma, slippery slope, and appeal to ignorance. These are not just academic errors. They are tools used every day to manipulate our minds, guide our decisions, and poison our conversations. Now that you know them, you will start to see them clearly everywhere. Your task is not just to avoid using them, but to learn how to gently expose them when others do. By doing so, you don't just win an argument, you win a victory for the truth. Let's begin with the sixth fallacy in our series, one responsible for a huge amount of superstition and misunderstanding in our world. The false cause fallacy, also known as with it, therefore because of it. Its Latin name is post hoc ergo propter hoc. It occurs when we assume that because event B came after event A, then event A must have caused event B. Our minds are wired to find patterns and connect causes with effects, and this fallacy deceptively exploits this natural tendency. A classic example asterisk: I wore my favorite team's jersey yesterday, and they won the game. Therefore, my jersey is the reason they won. This sounds ridiculous, but we see this fallacy in more serious forms every day. An example from economics asterisk: after the new president took office, the unemployment rate went up. Therefore, the new president's policies are the cause of the rise in unemployment. This might be true, but it might not be. There could be countless other factors: a global economic crisis, technological changes, or a natural business cycle. Jumping to the conclusion that the first event caused the second is just a temporal coincidence, not proof of causality. Always remember, correlation does not imply causation. Just because two things happen together or in sequence doesn't mean one causes the other. Before you accept any causal relationship, always look for stronger evidence than mere timing. The seventh fallacy is a favorite of those who want to undermine any truth or rule: the fallacy of division. This fallacy occurs when we assume that what is true for the whole must be true for every one of its parts. It's an attempt to dismantle a collective truth by pointing out that one of its components does not share the same property. A simple example asterisk: this machine is very heavy. Therefore, every part of it must be heavy. This is clearly false, as the machine could be made of thousands of light screws and wires. But it gets more insidious in abstract arguments. An example from debates * Team A is the best team in the league. Therefore, every player on Team A is better than any player on other teams. This is not necessarily true. Other teams might have more skilled individual players, but Team A works better as a whole. Another example * water is liquid and transparent. Water is made of hydrogen and oxygen. Therefore, hydrogen and oxygen are also liquid and transparent. This is a glaring scientific error. This fallacy teaches us an important lesson. The whole can be greater than or different from the sum of its parts. When someone tries to refute a holistic idea by focusing on a small part, be wary. They may be using the fallacy of division. The eighth fallacy is the exact opposite of the previous one, and it's called the fallacy of composition. It occurs when we assume that what is true for the parts must be true for the whole. It's an attempt to construct a false universal truth by assembling the properties of individual parts. A simple example * every part of this car is lightweight. Therefore, the entire car is lightweight. This might be true, but it isn't necessarily. The sum of thousands of light parts could result in a very heavy car. An example from economics * if one person stands up at a concert, they will see better. Therefore, if everyone stands up, everyone will see better. This is obviously false. What works for the individual can lead to a counterproductive result when applied to everyone. Another example * the atoms of a human being are invisible to the naked eye. A human is made of atoms. Therefore, a human is invisible to the naked eye. This fallacy reminds us that assembling small truths doesn't necessarily lead to a big truth. The whole must always be evaluated as an independent system with its own properties that may not be present in its parts. The ninth fallacy is a powerful weapon for manipulating public opinion. The appeal to authority fallacy. This fallacy occurs when we claim something is true simply because a person of authority or fame said it, without providing any logical evidence to support the claim. We naturally tend to trust experts, and this fallacy exploits that trust. But not every appeal to authority is a fallacy. It's logical to trust a doctor talking about medicine, but it becomes a fallacy in two main cases. 1. When the authority is not an expert in the field *, a famous movie star says this type of investment is safe. Therefore, I should invest my money in it. The actor's fame doesn't make them a financial expert. 2. When the experts in that field disagree * Dr. X says his theory is correct. This is not sufficient proof, especially if there are dozens of other scientists who disagree with him. This fallacy is extremely common in advertising, using celebrities to endorse products they have no expertise in, and in political debates, appealing to a religious or historical authority out of context. When you face an argument of this type, ask yourself, is this person a genuine expert in this specific field? And is there a consensus among other experts? Don't let titles or fame blind you to the need for real evidence. The 10th fallacy for today is a particularly subtle and destructive one, the begging the question fallacy or circular reasoning. This is the mother of all logical fallacies because it makes an argument seem proven when it's actually just spinning in a circle. This fallacy occurs when the conclusion you are trying to prove is already present as one of the premises of the argument, either explicitly or implicitly. A simple, clear example * this book must be trusted because it is a holy book, and we know it's holy because it says so itself. Here, you are assuming the book is true to prove that it is true. A more subtle example * freedom of speech is important because it's essential that people should be able to express themselves freely. The second sentence is just a rephrasing of the first, not evidence for it. You haven't provided any reason why it's essential for people to express themselves freely. This fallacy is sometimes hard to detect because it often uses different words to say the same thing twice. When you hear an argument, always ask yourself, is the evidence provided just a repetition of the conclusion in a different format? If the answer is yes, you are dealing with a worthless circular argument. False cause, division, composition, appeal to authority, and circular reasoning. You have now added 10 intellectual viruses to your mind's database. You are no longer just a passive listener, but an active analyst, capable of deconstructing arguments and examining their foundations. Remember, the goal is not just to expose the mistakes of others, but to purify our own thinking first. The more aware we become of these fallacies, the less likely we are to use them ourselves. Let's begin with the 11th fallacy in our series, one of the most powerful tools of social pressure, the appeal to popularity, also known as the bandwagon fallacy. Its name comes from the phrase, jumping on the bandwagon, and it occurs when an idea is claimed to be true simply because a large number of people believe in it or practice it. It exploits our innate desire to belong and our fear of being different. Its motto is, 50 million people can't be wrong. A historical example. Most people in the past believed the Earth was flat. Therefore, it must have been flat. This clearly shows us that truth is not a matter of a democratic vote. A modern example. You have to buy this new phone. It's the best-selling phone in the world this year. The popularity of a product does not necessarily mean it is the best in quality or the most suitable for your needs. When you face this argument, remember that the popularity of an idea has nothing to do with its logical validity. A truth remains a truth even if no one believes it, and a falsehood remains a falsehood even if everyone follows it. The 12th fallacy is one that uses the past as a weapon against the present, the genetic fallacy. This fallacy occurs when an idea is accepted or rejected based on its source or its historical origin, rather than being evaluated on its current merit and logic. It judges a book by its cover, or rather, an idea by its roots. An example of rejection. You're talking about the benefits of yoga for relaxation? Don't you know it originated from Hindu religious rituals? Therefore, we shouldn't practice it. Here, a beneficial practice is being dismissed because of its origin, not based on its current verifiable health benefits. An example of acceptance. This herbal medicine must be effective. Our ancestors have been using it for hundreds of years. The age of an idea does not prove its validity. Modern medicine might have better and safer treatments. An idea must be evaluated based on the evidence available today. Its origin might be historically interesting, but it does not determine its truth or falsehood. The 13th fallacy is a subtle one that confuses the part with the whole, the hasty generalization fallacy. This fallacy occurs when we reach a broad, general conclusion based on a sample size that is far too small or unrepresentative of the whole group. It is the foundation of most stereotypes and prejudices. An example. I met two tourists from country X, and they were extremely rude. Therefore, all people from country X are rude. This is a hasty generalization. A personal experience with two individuals cannot be used to judge an entire nation of millions. Another example. I tried this restaurant once and the food was bad. Therefore, this is a bad restaurant. It could have been a bad day for the chef, or perhaps the one dish you ordered was the only bad one on the menu. To avoid this fallacy, we always need large and representative samples before making general claims. Always ask yourself, do I have enough data to support this sweeping conclusion? The 14th fallacy is a very cunning one used to distract and mislead, the red herring fallacy. The origin of this term comes from an old practice where the strong-smelling red herring fish was used to distract hunting dogs from the trail of a rabbit. In a debate, this fallacy occurs when someone introduces an irrelevant but interesting or controversial side topic, with the aim of diverting the discussion away from the original topic they are beginning to lose. An example. Person A. The scientific evidence shows that this factory is dangerously polluting the river and should be fined. Person B. The factory manager. You're talking about pollution? What about the unemployment that will happen if we shut down? We employ 500 families. Do you want to throw all those people onto the street? Notice how the manager didn't respond to the argument about pollution. Instead, he jumped to the emotionally charged topic of unemployment to distract everyone. Unemployment is an important issue, but it's a different topic. The original point was about the factory's responsibility for pollution. To expose it, you must gently but firmly bring the conversation back on track. The issue of unemployment is very important and we should discuss it later, but right now we are talking about the pollution problem. Let's focus on that point first. The 15th fallacy for today is a very common one in our daily debates, the confirmation bias fallacy. This fallacy is not just a mistake in an argument. It is a natural tendency in all of our minds. It occurs when we tend to search for, interpret, and recall information in a way that confirms our pre-existing beliefs, while we ignore or dismiss information that contradicts them. It's like you're wearing glasses that only allow you to see the color you love. An example: a person believes that a certain brand of car is the best. They will actively seek out articles and opinions that praise this brand and will remember all their positive experiences with it. On the other hand, if they see an article that criticizes it or meet someone with a bad experience, they will dismiss it as an exception or someone who doesn't understand cars. This fallacy makes us live in an echo chamber, where we only hear the echo of our own ideas. To fight it, you must actively and intentionally seek out evidence that challenges your beliefs. Ask yourself, what is the strongest argument against my opinion? Be as skeptical of your own ideas as you are of others. This is the essence of true critical thinking. The appeal to popularity, the genetic fallacy, hasty generalization, the red herring, and confirmation bias. You have now added 5 new shields to your intellectual fortress. Your arsenal now contains 15 logical weapons. You no longer just see the surface of conversations. You see the hidden mechanisms that drive them. The goal is not to become a ruthless debater, but to become an unwavering seeker of truth. The 16th fallacy in our series, and one of the most powerful tactics of intellectual assassination, the poisoning the well fallacy. Imagine you're in a village that relies on a single water well. Before your enemy comes to drink from it, you secretly go and pour poison into it. Now, it doesn't matter how thirsty your enemy is or how pure the water originally was. The well has become deadly. In the world of debate, the well is the audience's mind, and the poison is abusive or negative information you spread about your opponent before they even begin to present their argument. The goal is to create a preemptive bias that makes it impossible to evaluate their argument objectively. A business world example asterisk in a board meeting, just before the young marketing director begins to present his innovative plan, the veteran CFO says, "Now we'll hear the vision of the younger generation who grew up on the internet and think everything can be solved with technology, without a real understanding of on-the-ground operational costs." What just happened? The well has been poisoned. The audience will no longer listen to the plan to evaluate it on its merits. They will listen while looking for any evidence that confirms it is unrealistic and too technological. The idea's proponent has been disqualified before he even began. How do you expose it? You must be brave and expose the tactic itself. You could say, "Thank you for that introduction. However, I ask everyone to evaluate this idea based on its content and its numbers, not on preconceived notions about me or my generation. Let's discuss the argument, not the person." The 17th fallacy, the favorite weapon of those who lack an argument and want to project a false sense of superiority. The nitpicker's fallacy, or style over substance. This fallacy is a more cunning version of the straw man. Instead of distorting the argument's meaning, the perpetrator ignores the content entirely and focuses on a tiny, marginal formal error. They act like a sniper waiting for a spelling mistake, a slip of the tongue, or a historical date that's off by 1 day, just to fire at it and declare victory, ignoring the powerful army of evidence standing behind it. An academic example asterisk: a graduate student presents a 300-page dissertation with complex statistical analysis proving a new theory. In the defense committee, a professor says, "Your work is interesting, but on page 247, in footnote number 3, you cited the second edition of a certain book, whereas the third edition is more accurate. This casts a shadow of doubt on the accuracy of your entire research." This is a psychologically devastating tactic. The professor didn't debate the core theory or the statistical analysis. He used a highly marginal error to undermine the credibility of the entire work in front of everyone. How do you counter it? Maintain your calm and confidence. Thank the nitpicker for their keen observation, then firmly bring the discussion back to the main topic. Say, "Thank you for that valuable observation. I will be sure to correct it." Now, returning to the main point of Chapter 3, what are your thoughts on the correlation between variable X and the results we found? The 18th fallacy, one that exploits our noblest human emotions as a weapon. The appeal to pity fallacy. Here, logic is completely abandoned, and evidence is replaced with tears and sad stories. The goal is to evoke a sense of guilt or sympathy in the opponent or the audience to the point where they accept the argument without scrutiny. It is emotional blackmail disguised as an argument. A courtroom example asterisk: a defense lawyer says to the judge, "Your Honor, you cannot send my client to prison. It's true that he stole, but he did it to feed his starving children. Look at him, he is a broken man, and if you imprison him, his family will be homeless on the streets. Can your conscience bear that?" The story might be true and heartbreaking, but it is logically irrelevant to the fact that the crime of theft was committed. The lawyer here is not debating the evidence. He is trying to influence the judge's decision by appealing to his pity. How do you handle it? This requires a delicate balance of humanity and logic. You can show empathy for the personal situation, but at the same time, refocus on the logical issue. I completely understand how difficult the situation you're describing is, and it is truly unfortunate. However, what we are trying to evaluate here is whether argument X is valid based on evidence Y. Let's separate the two issues. The 19th fallacy, a cornerstone of any rational debate, and to violate it is to collapse the dialogue. The burden of proof fallacy. The golden rule of logic states, "He who asserts must prove." This means the person making a new or extraordinary claim bears the responsibility of providing the evidence, not on others to disprove it. This fallacy occurs when the claimant evades their responsibility and shifts the burden of proof onto their opponent. A classic example from Carl Sagan. Person A: there is a tiny teapot orbiting the sun in an orbit between Earth and Mars. Person B: that's an amazing claim. How do you know? Do you have telescopic images or any evidence? Person A, committing the fallacy: no, the teapot is too small for any telescope to see. But can you prove it's not there? This is flipping the table. It's impossible to prove a negative across the entire universe. The person who claimed the teapot's existence is the one who must provide the proof. Without this rule, anyone could claim anything: the existence of invisible pink unicorns, an alien conspiracy to control our thoughts, and then demand the world to prove them wrong, which is an impossible task. The 20th and final fallacy for today, one that feeds on our temporary ignorance. The God of the gaps fallacy. This fallacy occurs when we face a phenomenon we don't understand or for which we don't have a complete scientific explanation at the moment. And we immediately jump to the conclusion that the explanation must be supernatural or divine. It uses the gaps in our current knowledge as positive evidence for the existence of the supernatural. A biological example asterisk: scientists cannot explain in full detail every single step of how consciousness arises from the brain. This is a gap in their knowledge. Therefore, consciousness must be something non-physical, a soul given to us by a creator. The problem here is that we are using ignorance as an argument. We don't know is the starting point for scientific inquiry, not an end point from which we conclude the existence of supernatural forces. The history of science is a long history of filling these gaps. Lightning was the wrath of the gods until we understood electricity. Disease was evil spirits until we discovered germs. When you hear this argument, remember that "I don't know" is the most honest and scientific answer, and it is not synonymous with "therefore, I know it's a supernatural being." Poisoning the well, the nitpicker's fallacy, appeal to pity, burden of proof, and God of the gaps. You have now added 5 new, precise tools to your mental toolbox. You are now equipped with 20 logical fallacies. The gambler's fallacy. This fallacy occurs when we mistakenly believe that past random events have an influence on future random events. If you flip a coin and it lands on heads 10 times in a row, what does your intuition tell you about the 11th flip? Most people will feel strongly that tails is due, that its probability has become higher. This feeling is precisely the gambler's fallacy. In reality, the probability of tails is still 50%. The coin has no memory. It doesn't know it showed heads 10 times. Every flip is a completely independent event. A real-life example asterisk: a couple has 4 boys and decides to have a 5th child. They might say, "We've had 4 boys in a row. The next one must be a girl. The odds are in our favor now." This is incorrect. With each pregnancy, the probability of having a girl remains roughly the same, around 50%, regardless of how many boys came before. This fallacy is dangerous because it's the foundation of gambling addiction. The gambler who loses repeatedly convinces himself that his big win is inevitable. So he keeps playing until he loses everything. How to avoid it? Always remember, in truly random events, the past does not influence the future. Every event is a new page. The 20-second fallacy, the exact opposite of the hasty generalization, the accident fallacy. This fallacy occurs when we apply a correct general rule to a specific exceptional case to which the rule does not apply. We forget that there is an exception to every rule. The general rule, lying is wrong. But imagine it's 1942, and you are hiding an innocent family in your basement, and a Nazi officer knocks on your door and asks, "Are you hiding anyone here?" If you apply the general rule blindly and tell the truth, you would have committed a catastrophe. In this exceptional case, lying is not just permissible. It is a duty. Another example asterisk the general rule. People should keep their promises. But if you promised a friend to return his weapon, and then you discover he intends to use it in a fit of rage to kill someone, keeping your promise would be the wrong thing to do. This fallacy is dangerous because it leads to rigid, bureaucratic thinking and ignores context and common sense. How to avoid it? Before applying any general rule, always ask yourself, are there special or exceptional circumstances in this case that make the rule inapplicable? The 23rd fallacy, a cunning one that uses apparent precision to deceive us. The Texas sharpshooter fallacy. Imagine a sharpshooter from Texas who fires randomly at the side of a barn, then walks over and draws a target circle around the biggest cluster of bullet holes, and then claims to be a skilled marksman. He didn't hit the target. He drew the target around his hits. This fallacy occurs when we selectively choose a data set to fit a specific conclusion and ignore all other data that doesn't fit. We see a pattern in randomness and then act as if that pattern was intended from the start. An example from horoscopes asterisk a person reads their daily horoscope which says, "You will face an unexpected challenge today." During the day, their printer suddenly jams. At the end of the day, they say, "Amazing! The horoscope was exactly right." They ignore all the normal events and focus only on the random hit that occurred. This fallacy is the basis of many conspiracy theories, where specific events are cherry-picked and linked together to form a story, while ignoring hundreds of other events that contradict that story. How to avoid it? Look at all the evidence, not just the evidence that confirms the hypothesis. Ask, was the hypothesis defined first and then the data gathered to test it? Or was the data gathered first and then a hypothesis invented to fit it? The 24th fallacy, very common in ethical debates. The appeal to nature. This fallacy assumes that whatever is natural is necessarily good, and whatever is unnatural is necessarily bad. Its slogan, "This product is 100% natural, so it's healthy," or "This behavior exists in the animal kingdom, so it's morally justified." This is a huge mistake. Nature is full of poisons, snake venom, disasters, earthquakes, and diseases, viruses. Conversely, many unnatural things are good, like medicine and law. Example asterisk in a debate about GMO foods, someone might say, "We must reject them. They are unnatural." This is an emotional argument. To evaluate them, we must look at the scientific evidence about their safety and benefits, not just whether they are natural or not. How to avoid it? Don't assume natural equals good. Evaluate everything based on its actual merits and drawbacks, not its origin. The 25th fallacy, one of the most frustrating in any debate, moving the goalposts. This fallacy occurs when someone changes the criteria for accepting an argument after evidence has been presented that meets the original criteria. Imagine you're taking a penalty kick, and after you kick the ball, the goalkeeper picks up the goal and moves it somewhere else, then tells you, "You missed." Example asterisk. Person A, "There's no proof humans landed on the moon." Person B, "Here are the photos, the rocks, and the laser reflectors that are still used today." Person A, moving the goalposts. "Ah, but you can't prove the astronauts themselves weren't brainwashed." The requested evidence was provided, but the opponent changed the standard of proof to something impossible. This makes the debate dishonest. How to deal with it? Point out the fallacy clearly. Say, we initially agreed the standard of proof was X. I have provided evidence for X. Now you are changing the standard to Y. This is not an honest discussion. Your tone of voice now shifts to a concluding, inspiring one. The gambler's fallacy, the accident fallacy, the Texas sharpshooter, the appeal to nature, and moving the goalposts. With this, we have completed our foundational arsenal with 25 logical fallacies. You now not only have a shield to defend your mind, but also a magnifying glass through which you can examine any argument, speech, or advertisement you encounter. But is this the end? Of course not. This is only the end of the beginning. Together, we have mastered the first level, and there are over 100 other fallacies that have been classified. What comes next will be denser and deeper. We will dive into other classes of fallacies, more subtle linguistic and psychological ones. And more importantly, we will move from defense to offense. We will learn the foundations of formal logic itself. We will study the fundamental laws of thought like the law of identity and the law of non-contradiction, ***, which states that something cannot be both itself and its opposite at the same time and in the same respect. This series was about detecting deception.